Our next guest, Jerry Falwell, Jr., is president of Liberty University and a member of Mr. Trump's Evangelical Advisory Board. Mr. Falwell, Merry Christmas and welcome to Fox News Sunday.
Merry Christmas to you, Chris. Thank you.
Last January, Donald Trump spoke at your Liberty University. Here's a clip.
We're going to protect Christianity, and I can say that. I don't have to be politically correct or...
Now, you were one of the first prominent evangelicals to endorse him, and for the rest of the campaign, other leaders of your faith, as well as a lot of students, or some students, I should say, at Liberty University criticized you, especially after the release of that Access Hollywood tape, but you never wavered. How come?
No. I just saw in Mr. Trump someone who really loved the American people, who was for the working man, the common man. I saw that early on. He spoke at Liberty in 2012 as well, so I'd gotten to know him over the years. And I just really believed it. It was sort of a gamble because I didn't know where he'd come down on all the issues, but because I believed he was a good man, I believed he would come down on the right side of the issues, and he's done that in the last year. And I've been proud of him, and I just think it was, like I said, it was a big risk for me, but so much was at stake, I couldn't afford to stay silent.
Let's look at the exit polls from election night a little over a month ago. As you can see there, Donald Trump got a higher percentage of the white evangelical vote than Mitt Romney did 4 years ago, or McCain before him, or even George W. Bush in 2004. How do you explain that?
Well, he made it very clear who his Supreme Court picks would be if he was elected. I think that was a big factor. Some of the social conservatives on the platform committee, the Republican National Convention, told me that not since 2004 has any Republican candidate allowed them to set the platform without interference, but Donald Trump was the first one who had done that in a long time. That was another good signal. And then the other factors, you know, even added to the platform, the repeal of the Johnson Amendment, which has been used by government to silence conservatives and pastors and conservative universities like the one nonprofit universities like the one that I had. And so all those things, they just resounded with evangelicals and with Christians. And my wife's noticed as she's done her Christmas shopping this year that more of the retailers are saying Merry Christmas. There's a new hope and optimism. There's a good spirit in America, and I think that's coming from his lead.
I think you would agree that Mr. Trump is no student of theology. I want to play a clip for you of an interview he did last year with the Christian Broadcasting Network. Here it is.
God is the ultimate. I mean, God created this. And, you know, here's the Pacific Ocean right behind us. So, nobody, no thing, there's nothing like God.
But you say that Mr. Trump, you think probably, your word, will be a better for social conservatives as president than Ronald Reagan was. Now, there's a contrary view, I don't have to tell you, that he doesn't really care about this, that he said it because that would help him get elected, but he cares about issues like trade and national security more than he does about issues like abortion or gay rights, which he was a late convert to. What's your feeling about that?
Well, I mean, like I said, he told us which Supreme Court justices he would appoint. That's about all a president can do on the abortion issue, is to appoint the right justices. And he, you know, he never pretended to be a theologian, and I said all through the campaign that we're not electing a pastor-in-chief. We need to. It's just like when you have a sick child, you look for the best doctor for that child. You don't look for the doctor that shares your faith or your theology. And that's what I think we have to do with government. We have to find the candidate who is most likely to support all the values that we hold dear. And, you know, evangelicals aren't that much different than the general population. They're concerned about all the issues you just mentioned: trade, immigration, terrorism, all the things that the general population was interested in. And so it's not like evangelicals only vote on one or two issues. They vote on all the issues,
Let me just pick up on that, if I may. Excuse me, Mr. Falwell, because you've gotten some controversy with other evangelical leaders about supporting the nomination of Rex Tillerson to be the Secretary of State, even though as a board member of the Boy Scouts, he succeeded in lifting the ban on gay scouts. Why doesn't that concern you?
Well, I've said that watching Trump assemble his cabinet has been the most exciting thing because he's brought in the captains of industry, he's brought in the leaders from every walk of life. It reminds me of the basketball dream team from the 1992 Barcelona Olympics when America was finally allowed to let professional athletes play. They beat every team by an average of 44 points. And that's what I see. I think what Trump is doing with his cabinet is assembling a dream team. I think Scott Pruitt is, I'm especially excited about his appointment at the head of EPA.
But if I may, before we run out,
especially
about
Tillerson. But back to Tillerson, his position on social issues, I don't believe are relevant in the position of Secretary of State. I don't think he'll ever have to weigh in on any of those issues. I think he's going to be out cutting deals like he did as the CEO of a global enterprise with Exxon, and I think that's what we need in that position. I don't think his position on social issues will ever make a difference as Secretary of State.
The North Carolina legislature just failed to repeal the law that's known as House Bill 2, which would ban people from going into bathrooms unless their gender and their birth certificate matches the bathroom they're in. Is that something you think that states should get involved in?
Well, I think each state, of course, is going to make their own decision on that. But if you follow that logic to its conclusion, does that mean that men will be able to play on women's basketball teams? I mean, you have to draw a line somewhere, and I think the concern of the North Carolina legislature is that men, women, and children are, that women, children are protected from men coming into women's shower rooms, and it makes sense. I mean, I haven't studied it closely exactly what the bill says, but it just seems like common sense to me.
Let's talk about your school, Liberty, which, as we mentioned earlier, is the largest Christian university in the world. And I want to put up some numbers. Since you succeeded your father in 2007, enrollment has increased from 9,600 to 15,000 residential students and from 27,000 to 98,000 online. Mr. Falwell, why do you think there is such a great and apparently growing demand for a Christian education?
Because it's so rare in higher education. Mayor Bloomberg in his commencement speech at Harvard a couple of years ago chastised the Ivy League because 96% of their faculty and staff had donated to the Obama administration. His point was, how can we have academic freedom and political correctness? That's my paraphrase, side by side. The two cannot coexist. And when you have everybody in major universities thinking the same way and conservatives are ridiculed when they speak up, I don't think that's academic freedom. And so I think the reason Liberty has prospered so much is because it's an alternative. It's something where free expression of ideas is allowed, where academic freedom is promoted. And I think it's just the fact, the Chronicle of Higher Education said last year that Liberty's strength is in the fact that it doesn't try to be like other universities. And they said that our business model is probably the future of higher education in America. So we've been able to use that business model to make Liberty one of the most prosperous universities in the country, one of the 5 largest universities, and we're one of only about 70 that's rated AA by Standard & Poor's and Moody's, but it's only because we don't try to be like everybody else.
Finally, and we got less than a minute left, sir, you're not a pastor, but as the president of Liberty University, I wonder about your thoughts about Christmas on this Christmas Day for your students and for our audience.
Well, we have to remember Christmas, the reason we celebrate it is because it's to recognize that God's greatest gift to mankind through his son Jesus Christ that provides the hope for redemption, forgiveness, eternal life. And I think that can never forget Jesus and the great commandment taught that we're supposed to love our neighbors as ourselves. I think if we all live by that commandment, that we would see a totally different world. And you know, he taught personal charity. It means he didn't say go vote for somebody who's going to take money from your neighbor and give it to the poor. He said you help the poor. So it doesn't absolve us to vote for somebody who's going to promote welfare. It's our job to help the poor. And I think that's what Christmas is all about. And I think the electors the other day gave America a great Christmas present when they made it official that Donald Trump will be president in January. And it's just there's a new spirit of hope and optimism in the country like I've never seen, even among people who didn't support Trump. And I think that's encouraging.
Mr. Falwell, thank you. Thanks for your time, and Merry Christmas to you and your family, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you.